Rise, innovate, and create lasting impact. And today I have my special guest. He's an author and, of course, helping entrepreneurs unlock original business ideas and turn them to revenue. And, of course, the author of the book, Scintilla, none other than Mr. Robert Gaines.
Thank you for having me on, Daniel. Always a pleasure, sir.
Welcome, Mr. Robert, on Entrepreneurship 101. And can you please introduce more about yourself? That I nice.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I am a military veteran. I was in the Army for 8 years, and I'm a graduate of University of Louisville School of Business. And got a degree in business management, and I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've had the opportunity to do some really fun, wonderful businesses, things that I was very enthused about, recording studio, an art gallery, and now in the third season of my life, I'm an entrepreneur, author, and really excited to get into Scintilla because, of course, the book is all about generating ideas.
Generating ideas. We love that, Mr. Robert. And thank you so much for generating those ideas and share to the world. Thank you for sharing it. And today, let's talk about generating product and business ideas. So, Mr. Robert, when you meet someone who's prolific idea generator, what does their day-to-day attention look like? Where are they consciously or unconsciously pointing the curiosity that most people filter out?
Great question, Daniel. So, a lot of people are staring at their devices. They're very distracted. And the people who generate really good ideas, they're like antennas. They're soaking up everything that's going on around them. They have that great Zen Buddhism presence of mind. So they're very much in the moment, and they're good at observation. They're seeing what experience they're going through and the experience of what other people are going through. So, of course, a good entrepreneur is always looking for friction. They're looking for pain that wants to be relieved. And you really need to have open eyes and have awareness. And you can't do that if you're staring down at your iPhone all day. So good entrepreneurs, especially the good idea generators, they're like antennas. They're out here. They're
Mhm.
not in here.
Hmm. I want to spread my antennas, Mr. Robert. I want to spread my antenna.
Yes, yes.
Well, we all complain about minor frustrations daily, don't we? What's the mental switch or framework that transform a personal grip like, oh, this is always happens into a valid hypothesis for a product or service?
I think about this movie a lot, and I still can't think of the name of it. But there's a line in it, and it's funny, but it's very, very true because everybody wants Americans as customers because we consume so much and we spend so much money. So the dream client are Americans. And in this film, there was a scene where a guy said the things that Americans are afraid of more than anything is inconvenience. So if you can remove inconvenience, Americans and probably Canadians too will pay a lot of money for that. So
Hmm.
most people will pay money to either take away pain or to give pleasure. And of course, there's probably a little bit more money in the pleasure than there is removing the pain. But those are the two things. And when you run into a situation like that, particularly if people are experiencing a massive inconvenience, there's a good chance they'd be willing to pay to have that inconvenience relieved.
Inconvenience and pain. Wow, interesting, Mr. Robert. So, can you walk us through a real example of a great idea that come from connecting to completely unrelated fields, hobbies, or industries? What practices make those novel connections more likely?
Great question. So in the book, there's 4 chapters, and the titles of the 4 chapters is observation. I always struggle with this. It's so funny. This is my second edition of the book, and I keep
Mhm.
forgetting this part, but it's observation, conversation, investigation, and contemplation. So that's at the middle of the book because those are really the 4 methods to find business ideas. So obviously the observation, we talked about that, where you're going through a situation and you're feeling the friction, you're feeling the problem, and you think, okay, maybe somebody's willing to pay for this. That's observation. The C is conversation, where you're getting a feedback from other people. And then investigation would be, let's say, like us as YouTubers, sometimes people that do solo content, they'll look for what's currently popular. What are people looking for? So, me in the past as an entrepreneur, I just got into the business that I wanted to be into, and I didn't know in advance if there was a real demand. I hoped there was a demand. And a lot of people do that, Daniel. They'll start something just hoping people will buy it. But through investigation, and thank goodness now that we have Google Trends and Google Alerts and all this data we can find, and AI, we can actually find out what people are looking for and then to put the product right in front of those same people. And then, of course, lastly was contemplation. And that's when you pull all of those data points, all that observation and conversation together, and you come out with a product. So in the book, there's this example of me just walking through my gym, going from my car to inside the gym, and how many problems I ran into just to go from checking in to putting my clothes in the locker in the bathroom. And just in 90 seconds, out of that, there's 3 or 4 products immediately that probably could be created that would make that experience so much better. And that's in 90 seconds. So again, it's a really good observation of problems. You can just use your own instincts. Anytime you feel uncomfortable about a process or feel delayed, you need to mark that down, because that's going to be potentially your great idea.
Yes, indeed. Be curious and everything. People, be curious. Who knows? You will be the next Einstein. Why not, right? So, why do people often spot transformative opportunities outside an industry rather than from the entrenched insiders? How can we deliberately cultivate that beginner's mind even in areas where we have expertise?
I think, and this goes to, I said on a post just this morning, that one of the toughest things for writers is to be aware of how other people perceive their work. And industries have trouble innovating because they're inside the forest. The tree is right there in front of them. So a lot of times somebody on the outside has these great innovative ideas. And that's why Meta, Google, ABC Company, and these other big firms constantly buy up these little creative companies, because after a company is about 10 or 15 years old, they really lose their creativity. They really lose their hunger. So they're constantly acquiring these young, fresh minds that are looking at things differently, and they're usually on the outside. So you can, inside the company, you can remain creative, and that's called an entrepreneur, which I do to also talk about in the book. And it's exactly like what you said. You have to keep yourself in a beginner's mind. So one of the methods to do that is to constantly think about the experience of the customer from the customer's perspective. That's very hard to do. Even when you're writing, you have this message that you want to get out. There's what you want to say, and then there's how it's going to be heard or read or perceived on the other side. So having that beginner's mind, you never forget what it was like when you went through something before. So have a customer's mind. Be a customer to your own business. I know people that have their own companies, and they'll call in as if they're a customer, and they'll go through that whole process. So that's how you can stay innovative inside your own company, is to keep that beginner's mind and never forget what the customer's going through. And a lot of companies lose their way.
Mr. Robert, beyond brainstorming, do you have any personal or prescribed rituals for idea generation? Why is the structure itself powerful?
I think mastermind groups, and obviously that's the brand of our podcast, the Free Time Mastermind podcast, because one person is really good, but there is two minds. It's more than 200%. So one person is 100%, another person on their own is 100%. But you put those two people together, you've got 300%, because it really, and the more people you add to it, the more powerful that becomes, because that's the mastermind is not the individual. We think of a mastermind as the person that thinks of everything, but in our mastermind group, we think about the mastermind as a singular organism of a bunch of people together. That's where the magic really happens, because everybody's from a different level of experience. They were born into a different type of family. They come from different educational circumstances, financial circumstances, may even come from a different part of the country. And I personally, I put a lot of stock in what younger people say, because I am seeing the world through the eyes of me, a 54-year-old American guy living in Central Florida. So that's my perception. So I love young people because they have this, they know what's going to be popular next. They know what's popular now. They have their fingers on the pulse of what's going on. So I think mastermind groups, talking in groups and discussions, and especially making sure there are a lot of young people in your network, because they're going to see the next hot, great product way before somebody my age will, because I'm a little bit kind of separated from what's currently popular.
Mr. Robert, let's talk about the force constraints catalyst. How can imposing artificial constraints like a product for empty nester that uses TikToks or service with a zero customer support actually unlock more creative and viable ideas than a blank state?
That's funny, Daniel, because that reminds me of a trick we used to use back when I had an art gallery in 2008, and we would have contests and challenges, and we would take an artist that's been doing the same kind of art for 10 or 15 years, and they're very, very good in their craft, and we'll give them only a handful of colors, or we'll
Mhm.
give them a type of brush they've never used before, and we put them in a completely unknown environment. And you, being so savvy about cooking, you know that on these competition cooking shows, what do? They take these chefs who are brilliant, but they only give them a handful of ingredients, or they give them kind of an oddball kitchen, or they build in these really strange constraints. But out of that, these people are forced to create something completely unique and completely new. So I think that's probably one of the best aspects of the cooking shows, is they impose an artificial constraint, and out comes this, if the chef is good and they're very imaginative, out comes this amazing dish with a handful of oddball things that they were given. Because I think somebody said a long time ago, the difference between a cook and a chef is a chef can go in any kitchen, anywhere, with any ingredients and come out with a good meal. That's the difference between the level of a cook and a level. So to speak to your question, Daniel, I think imposing artificial constraints on any situation can force you to think in unusual ways. So I think it's an absolutely genius tool to come up with good things.
Definitely. A good thing leads to a good idea. The adjustment possible exploration. Mr. Robert, the concept of the adjacent possible suggests the next viable ideas are one step away from the current reality. How do you systematically map the edges of an existing market or technology to find those adjustment opportunities?
I think the part of the book that I'm most proud of is the part where I talk, because everybody wants to be a competitor. That most people, when I talk to folks coming up with a product or a service idea, because the book talks a lot about services too, so it's not just physical products. But the first thing people go for is, they're like, I'm going to come out with my version of this their product, but it's going to be cheaper and it's going to be better. So they're going head to head competitive, which is the hardest road to go. That's the hardest path. So in the book, I encourage people heavily to lean in towards companion products and complementary products. So let's say, for instance, this is my iPhone, but I also have it in this special case where it can still charge. And then I even have a little label that I bought on it with my name and phone number in case I lose my phone. So there's a lot, I've added things to the phone. So I've added these other little products. So I think it's much smarter to find a popular product out there, and come up with an event, if you're trying to get a physical product, and find something that attaches to it, or increases its use somehow or decreases its use. I saw an ad just yesterday for a little device called Brick, and it just turns your phone off. It doesn't allow you to play around and doom scroll on TikTok. So here is this amazing device that actually interferes with the function of something, and I think that's genius. Those are the type of things that I try to push people to think about. But it's not just doing competitive products. I think there's a lot more money in complementary. Companion is are things that have to go together, like a printer and printer paper, or a printer and ink. They have to operate with both of them together. But I think complementary products for inventors are the best way to go. And there's also software versions of complementary products, an add-on. So let's say if you use ChatGPT, there's these other GPTs inside of ChatGPT that you can choose that do these specific functions. So these companies just write a piece of code that integrates with ChatGPT. So I think complementary products are really the easiest path to go from one step to a viable idea.
Mr. Robert, in your book, Scintilla, which chapter of the book focuses on entrepreneurship?
I think I think the whole thing does, because what was tough about writing that book, Daniel, is I had to decide what the audience's base level of entrepreneurship would be. So I actually wrote it even for somebody who doesn't have a degree in business. I wanted the message to be able to be for everybody. And that's a tough sell, Daniel. As you know, the broader your niche is, the tougher it is to sell an idea. So the book has this really broad appeal. And but entrepreneurship and some lessons that I've learned are woven throughout it. I think my follow-up book, which I'm about 90% done with, and it doesn't even have a title yet, that's going to be a lot more of an education into entrepreneurship. But in the book Scintilla, throughout the book, I just lightly touch on it, just so if somebody has no business experience at all, they'll kind of know where to go next. Because my book is solely about how to come up with an idea. What you do with it after, there's much better books for that. Like, and I'll give you one. Jeff Walker's Launch. I think as far as putting a product out on the market, that book is excellent. I would tell people to buy my book first, and then once you've got your idea, get Jeff Walker's book, because those two are powerful. That and they complement each other. So Jeff's book is a complementary product to my book.
Mr. Robert, as an author and helping entrepreneurs, what are your short term and long term goals?
My personal short-term and long-term goals.
Yes, please.
Yeah, yeah, great question. Yeah, I don't get asked that very much. Yeah. So, and this is gonna be unusual for your audience, but, I'm actually relocating. So my short-term goals is to get out of Central Florida. I'm moving to Central America, of all things. So I'm doing something that I talk about in the book is geo arbitrage, where you take advantage of, um, the let's say the strength of the dollar is much higher in other countries. And let's face it, living in the US has gotten extremely expensive. It's still the land of opportunity. I think there's wonderful things here, but I'm in a phase of my life and entrepreneurship where it makes more sense for me to operate to bring down my operational costs. I still have customers in the US, except
Mhm.
now I'm relocating to a place that's much cheaper. And I even thought about the Philippines too, because that's the wonderful place. So many great people, and they speak English there. In a lot of the big cities. So my short-term goal is to do the relocation for the purposes of geo arbitrage. So that is really a business goal in a sense, because my expenses are going to go way down, and I'm going to be able to take more risks because I'm going to have more. All that money I'm saving, I can now invest back into the business. As far as long-term goals, although I am going to do some live events and things like that, I never wanted to put myself out there as a consultant. I never wanted to put myself out there as like a high ticket coach. It just doesn't appeal to me. So the long term for me is Centillium Publishing Company. And what I want to do is, not only do I want to keep publishing my books under that publishing company, I also want to start to cultivate younger talent, particularly bilingual talent that speaks English and Spanish, because there's a um, real shortage of business books in Spanish, a critical shortage. Even some of the best business books in English in the US haven't been translated to Spanish. So, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to buy the rights to those books because that would be very expensive. But my long term goal is to attract and cultivate young Latin talent and get some books under that publishing company. So that's my ultimate dream is to, and as far as it's written down and it's right here on my desk, 30 titles. I want 30 books under my publishing company. And then after I achieve that long term goal, then I can figure out what's next.
Well, good luck to your goals, Mr. Robert, and looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people that don't want to be like you?
I say that you've got to keep chipping away at it. If you've got kids, I understand, money's tight, you don't have a lot of time, but take time every day. I don't care if you only get 15 or 20 quiet minutes in the morning before the kids wake up. Use those 15 minutes. Put it on your phone, make a reminder, set an appointment with yourself. Do it every day, as many days as you can. If you don't write your goals down and if you don't start scheduling yourself time to be an entrepreneur, you will not break free from your job. I promise you that. If you don't write down your goals, I'll say it again. If you don't write down your goals and you don't schedule time to work on your business and stick to those times, it won't happen for you. So please, at the very minimum, write down your goals, put it on the refrigerator, the bathroom mirror, and then get into your phone, into your calendar, set a time every day, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, work on your business. I don't care if it's fixing your LinkedIn, making cold contacts, whatever. If you do that, you're chipping away at this giant stone that eventually will be gravel and break away. I'm living proof of that because success came way late in life for me. And I'm very grateful. So I want people to know just keep pushing. You will break through that rock. I promise you.
Yes, people, just do it and share to the world and stop procrastinating as well. So, Mr. Robert, thank you for that advice. And let's talk about the environmental design. How have you deliberately designed a physical space or digital feeds or inner circle that acts a continuous idea drip rather than relying on sporadic light bulb moments?
I think social media is a big part of that. So,
True.
it's hard. I'm out in the middle of nowhere. I'm in a very, very small town, and I've lived in big cities before. So there's not many conferences and networking events I can go to, Daniel. I have to do it electronically. So the mastermind groups and the social media. So my YouTube channel, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So there's this mixing and meeting of the minds on there. For somebody watching this that wants to be able to do that, start a Facebook group, start a LinkedIn group, attract other entrepreneurs, start that conversation because that's the seasoning in the sauce. All these different perspectives, and just have a meeting once a week. You can get on. There's free versions of Zoom where you can have a mastermind group or a virtual networking group. But yeah, people are stronger together. So find ways to bump up against other ambitious people because a lot of people that I used to work with, they were great people, very talented, but no ambition. And if you stay around those people long enough, they're going to drain your battery. They're going to drain your ambition away. So you've got to, I mean, you could tell when I talk about business, I get excited. I come alive, and you bump up against a few other entrepreneurs every day that light your fire. It's exciting. So keep your battery charged. Keep positive, ambitious entrepreneurs in your life. Connect with them online. Create groups. If there's or join a group, and if there's no group, you create one. That's my suggestion.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, tell me your friends and I will tell you who you are. Well, people, the ethics of inspiration, Mr. Robert. In a world where nothing is new, where's the line between being inspired by existing ideas and creating derivative copy? How do you ensure your synthesis is genuinely adaptive?
I think one way to look at things, and again, this is it's feel like I'm over promoting the book, but in the book, I talk about how we have some things out there that are produced. Let's just say physical products
Okay.
that. Well, I'll give you for an example. This is my little 1 terabyte drive that I used as a backup. Now that's not very sexy. It's just it's got rubber, so if I drop it, but it could be made aesthetically pleasing. You could
Mm-hmm.
make it look like it was done by Hermes or a major designer.
Okay.
Why not? You know,
Why not?
if you're into elegance and you're into fashion, you can take something very, very simple, or somebody could create a cover to go over it. The other thing too, there are very, very beautiful things that could be stripped down and made practical. So, and also too in the book I talk about there are things that are built very durably, like a commercial device that could be brought down to a consumer level. And then there are other things that are down at our consumer level that really should be made super heavy duty. So I think about this. I think about transitioning things from beautiful to functional, from functional to beautiful, from durable to cheap and throw away, or from cheap to throw away to very, very durable. So you think about shifting the not just the purpose of what the device is, but it's how you use it.
Well, Mr. Robert, to wrap up our discussion for today, how do you prevent the well of curiosity from running dry, especially after the grind of executing or on a previous idea? What are the process or the practices reveal your sense of wonder and what if?
I think to remain curious and to remain charged, you know, and we've talked about this. Some of this already is obviously your social group, the people that you're around will recharge your battery, and having those goals. But if you want to stay enthused, you have to have a big, audacious goal out in front of you that excites you. You know, not just any goal. You can't just say, I want to be a millionaire. I don't know, that's not exciting. You need something really like I want to spend a month in Jamaica, you know, and
Mhm.
you know, you create this really exciting scenario and you put it out there into the future. And that way you run for it. So have something that you can run for that makes you wake up and get excited in the morning. I mean, I'll tell you now at 54, I'm much more excited than I was. And I think each year as I go, I've gotten more and more excited because I can see the fruits of my labor. But when you plant something, it takes a long time for it to grow, and you just have to. It just takes time, and you got to stay motivated.
Yes, motivated for sure, Mr. Robert. I want to create something that will take us our humanity outside as a solar system or outside the Milky Way galaxy. How's that?
I think it's great. Yeah, we've got
Yeah.
two devices now. Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 are they're at the very edge of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a few years ago, it would take 6 months to get to Mars, and with the technology we have now, we can get there in 4 months. So
Mm-hmm.
people will be on Mars in our lifetime, Daniel. That's very exciting. And the people that go
Exciting.
to Mars, they're going to need equipment, they're going to need devices and inventions.
Mm-hmm.
And that environment's going to create a whole new set of needs. So there's going to be entrepreneurs that
Mm-hmm.
are going to get very, very rich just off of what we need for the Mars project. It's a very exciting time to
Definitely.
be alive.
Yes, definitely. And Mr. Robert, sorry, but I have one more question. At its best, it's the fundamental goal or generating business ideas about solving problems, creating value, or capturing market? Or is it about something more human, like expanding possibility or understanding people more deeply?
I think at its base, it's giving pleasure or taking away pain. When a company has a vision to be environmental or they want it to affect social change, I think there's room for that. But in the genesis of an idea, it has to take away pain or it has to give pleasure. All of those other social missions can all come later as part of your corporate culture. So I wouldn't let that interfere with the beginning of the idea. But obviously, whatever you do with that profit, you can make any problem go away in the world that you want once you've got a successful product. But the best, you in the beginning, you're taking away pain or you're giving pleasure.
Yes, definitely. So, Mr. Robert Gaines, can you please invite our listeners to support your book? your book, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Sure, sure. Well, in line with the book, I produced Scintilla in every possible format. If you like Kindle, I've got Kindle. You like paperback, I've got paperback, hardback. I even narrated the audiobook, which Audible should be approving in about a week. I turned it in to them a couple of weeks ago. It takes some time, but it's already, it's already been narrated. It's already been edited. So probably by the end of January, the audiobook version will be available. And I do have, Daniel, for your audience only exclusively, haven't even offered this on my channel. If they want a preview copy to be able to write an Amazon review, I have a few of those that I can give away free. And that's both the Kindle version and the Audible version. So it's just for your audience. I don't even offer that on my channel. So if they want to connect with me, obviously would love for them to go to Amazon and buy Scintilla, but I'm also very active, Robert Gaines, on LinkedIn. And then of course my podcast, the Free Time Mastermind podcast, which I need to get you on my podcast, Daniel, because you're the
Yes.
hardest working man in podcasting. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, definitely. One of these days, Mr. Robert, and I hope you will be my regular guest on Entrepreneurship 101. Yes, people, let's support Mr. Robert Gaines because if you support him for sure, more and more empowering advocacy like this will rise. So, Mr. Robert, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Always a pleasure, sir.
Welcome, people. See you soon.